Hello everybody, this is Connor, BoatsDon'tSink, here with another Shadowverse Evolve deck profile. Today we're going to keep going through the Booster Pack 3 Flame of Lævateinn decks, this time looking at Earth Rite Runecraft. This is also the collaboration for Booster Pack 3 with Millie Parfait, so we're going to be taking a look at those cards as well. First off, what is Earth Rite? Earth Rite is a mechanic that was introduced in Booster Pack 1, Advent of Genesis. It uses Earth Rite effects that spend stack counters in order to get sort of stronger effects than normal. These often tie into either dealing direct damage, dealing damage to followers, or things that relate to golem trait followers, usually tokens. We're going to see a couple of golem tokens. The way you get these stack counters to spend is on Earth Sigil amulets. Some of these are actual cards that go in your deck, some are tokens that Earth Rite related cards will make. And oftentimes, again, they're related to these golem tokens, the strike form and guard form golems. So we'll be seeing a lot of those in our deck as well. Now, taking a look at the deck, just a reminder, this is meant to be a starting point to work off of and may not be fully optimized for any specific meta. You should test this for yourself and make any changes that you find necessary to suit your personal playstyle or local meta. Here, we are finally looking at a deck that is not just a bunch of 3-ofs. We still have a number, but we do have more 1 and 2-ofs in this deck, especially to fit sort of our Merlin toolbox that we have, and just a wider spread of top-end cards to fit more specific scenarios, since Rune does tend to play a little more reactive, where most of the decks that we've seen so far are highly proactive. You can also check out the deck log in the code in the bottom right, 60YP for this one. That'll also be in the description. Our Evolve deck, similar to Haven, really simple, just 2-3-3-2. We don't have that many different followers that evolve, especially since so many of our cards are spells and amulets. Our curve for this deck is a bit higher than a lot of the others I've looked at. We only have 26 cards that cost 3 or lower, with the remaining 14 being at 4 and higher. Though we still have a pretty high concentration around like the 2, 3, 4 mark. So early to mid game is where most of our cards are going to fall. Though we do have a lot of cards with sort of extra costs they can pay into, or higher evolve costs that might make them modal cards that can transition into the later game quite well, in addition to the early game applications. As I said, 20 followers, 10 spells, 10 amulets. We're not really playing a high enough spell count to go deep into spell chain effects, but we have 1 or 2 in the deck. And the amulets are mostly, as I've said, for our stack effects. 9 of our 10 amulets have stack on them, and that's going to be how we get our stack counters in the early game. The first one of these that we're playing 3 copies of is Teachings of Creation. This is a 1-cost amulet with stack, and just simply has fanfare, draw a card. So a little deeper explanation on how stack works with this card. Stack means that it enters with 1 stack counter on it. If it ever hits 0 stack counters, it is destroyed. If it would be removed from the field while it has stack counters on it, instead of removing it, you simply remove 1 stack counter. So if your opponent plays Execution, for example. In addition, it has the activated ability to engage itself and move any number of stack counters, or rather I believe all stack counters, from itself onto any other card with stack. This is basically so that instead of having, 3 or 4 amulets clogging up your board at all times, you can condense all of your stack counters down into 1 amulet. So as you play multiple copies of this throughout the game, you'll just be moving the counters all onto a single copy. So yep, drawing a card, it's good, it's card advantage, it's our turn 1 play. We really just want to be using this to get early stack counter onto board and be able to cantrip while we're doing it so that we still have cards to keep playing. The second amulet that we play is also 1 cost and is pretty similar in sort of purpose in the deck. It also has stack. Fanfare, look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal a card with Earth Rite from among them and add it to your hand. Put the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. This is Cauldron of Calamity. It is one of the collaboration cards. It has the same name as Witch's Cauldron, so you can play either version of this. As far as Earth Rite cards that we're playing in the deck, there are 7 different cards, making up 16 copies total. So, pretty decent chance of finding one off the top 4, even if it's not the specific one you're looking for. Most of these are also 3 cost and higher, so they're going to be more for our later game. Even one of the 3 cost ones costs another 3 to evolve. So you're basically finding your mid and late game pieces here, but they're still important to have in your hand, and they're going to make up the majority of your strategy once you get to them. Looking at our first follower at 2 cost, we have Crafty Warlock. This is a 2/2 for 2. Last words, summon a Magic Sediment token. Magic Sediment is the token that has the stack ability, so Crafty Warlock again is a way that we can put sort of a body on the board that can either pressure our opponent's follower or their leader's defense total, while still giving us a benefit if the opponent decides to remove him immediately, since we get a stack counter that we can start using at 3 cost and higher for some of our effects. You can also evolve for 1 into a 3/3. The last words now summons a Magic Sediment and also adds 1 to a stack on the field. So instead of getting 1 counter, we're getting 2 counters if our Crafty Warlock is the one, if he gets removed after he's evolved. Looking at spells, we have Fire Chain. This is a 2-cost quick timing spell to select up to 2 enemy followers on the field and deal 3 damage divided between them. This can be pretty good against early aggressive decks, especially if they, go first, play a 1-drop, and then play a 2-drop. You can often use the 3 damage to split 1 and 2 and answer both of them at the same time. If they only play 1 follower, though, you can put all 3 damage into the same follower, which is going to remove it that way. This is good for decks that are playing not really as many followers at 1, but some beefier ones on 2. You can answer 3 defense. This card is kind of situational, like meta dependent on whether it's going to be good or not based on what you're playing against. So these 3 removal slots between this card and the next card can kind of be split up however you want or however you feel best. We're playing 1 copy of Surefire Bullet. So if you think you're going to need the 4 damage from being able to hit evolved followers, which there are a number of in this meta, Alice Wonderland Explorer and Floral Fencer are 2 big ones that come to mind. And I guess Draconeer in Dragon is another new one that's been introduced that's pretty good. So if you think you're going to play against those a lot more often than the sort of split bodies, go higher on Surefire Bullet counts maybe. It's just 2 costs. You can still do the 3 damage to a single target, just like Fire Chain, but instead of the upside of being able to split it, you have the upside of dealing 4 instead if it's an evolved target. This card is not great against Uma Musume, since most of their followers race to become 4/4s instead of evolving. So maybe that could also be a factor in determining how many you play. Our final amulet in the deck that actually has the stack ability is Alchemist's Workshop for 2 play points. Fanfare, summon a Strikeform Golem token. Strikeform Golem is a 3/2 with Rush, and it is Golem trait. This is great because it lets us actually apply pressure to the board while getting more stack counters in play, similar to Crafty Warlock, but a little more proactive. If we need to, we can put this 3 attack straight into a body on the opponent's board. Otherwise, we can leave it up and force the opponent to remove it, or we threaten their actual defense total with 3 damage on the next turn. As we'll see going through, we actually also have a lot of cards that interact with these golems, so it's also nice just to get these on board early so that you can benefit from it later. The first of these is our first follower at 3 cost. We have Ancient Alchemist, a 3 cost 2/5. Fanfare Earth Rite, put 2 Guard Form Golem tokens into your EX area. So for 1 stack, we're getting 2 tokens into EX area. They don't come straight to field, but we can play them on the following turn. Guard Form Golems are 2/3s with Ward. This card has a pretty good stat line to actually just run out on 3. The evolve cost of 3, it does mean that we can't play it and evolve it in the same turn until much later in the game. But 2/5 is pretty beefy, so in a lot of matchups right now, I think it is actually safe to run this out on 3 and just hope the opponent can't remove it. There are definitely, compared to set 1 when this card released and Earth Rite was seeing play, there's a lot fewer decks playing Execution, a lot fewer decks playing Acolyte's Light. Really, you only have to worry about like Serpent's Wrath, you have to worry about the Crystallia Lily bottom decking you, and you have to worry about if Uma Musume has Agnes Tachyon plus Make Some Noise, they can deal 4 and then -1/-1. So there are still things that can get you, but there's a lot fewer of them in the meta. Sword is definitely going to struggle with being able to deal 5. And Forest, honestly, outside of specifically Lily, probably can't do it either. So playing this down in a lot of matchups is just going to be pretty easy way to stick it. If you can evolve it, it evolves into a 3/6, which is a fantastic stat line. Almost nothing deals 6 damage right now. And 6 damage even dodges the Humpty Dumpty Fable Haven evolve, which is one of the biggest things to watch out for since that does 5 to all followers. We get some new text here compared to the base form. While this card is on your field, your Golem followers cost 1 less to play. So that's going to make both our Strike form and Guard form Golems only cost 1. Which means if we go second, we can actually play Ancient Alchemist on 3, and then on 4, use 2 play points and an evolution point to evolve, and then use our remaining 2 play points to push up both Guard form Golems that we made the turn prior. Whenever a Golem follower is put onto your field, select an enemy leader or enemy follower on the field and deal it 3 damage. If you need to, this can be a good way to clear the opponent's board. Otherwise, this is 3 damage straight to their face, which is huge. If you can start just making a lot of tokens and triggering this ability multiple times in a turn, you can burn out your opponent quicker than they can find an answer to your Ancient Alchemist. Because of this, you're usually not going to want to swing with the Ancient Alchemist unless you have to. Instead, just leaving it refreshed so that they can't attack it. We also have a number of cards that are going to be making these tokens for us outside of Ancient Alchemist. As we already saw, Alchemist's Workshop gets to make one. We have a spell called Golem Protection that summons 2 Guard form Golems straight to our field, and an amulet that both makes a Guard form or Strike form on play, and can engage and pay an Earth Rite to make another one each turn. So all of these pieces of setup are going to be great with Ancient Alchemist to recur the burn effect over and over again. Next we have Merlin, kind of just the eternal staple in Runecraft. 3 cost 3/2. Fanfare, search your deck for a spell, reveal it, add it to hand. We play a lot of kind of just like one-of spells in this deck, different things for Merlin to grab utility-wise. We're not playing as high of a spell count overall as a lot of the Rune spell chain decks would, but we still have 10 spells in the deck. That's enough for Merlin to be able to grab one. If you need removal, a lot of these are removal options: Fire Chain, Surefire Bullet, Witch Bolt. Demonic Strike can double both as removal or 3 damage to your opponent's leader directly, which is great with Merlin. Otherwise, you can grab Golem Protection if you're just trying to set up your board and don't really need removal. Going ahead and getting one in hand to follow up a good like Ancient Alchemist turn, or just to get some wards on board is always strong. Merlin can also pay 2 to evolve into a 4/3. On evolve, select a spell that costs 3 or less in Cemetery and play it for 0. So out of our spells, 4 of our 6 different spells cost 3 or less. Typically, you're not going to be grabbing the 2 cost ones out of here unless you specifically need Fire Chain to remove 2 followers. Demonic Strike is a great target just to put 3 more damage into your opponent's face. Oftentimes, games can end while your opponent's at 6 life off of Merlin. Search Demonic Strike, play it, evolve, play it again for 0. Or if you need bigger removal, you can use Witch Bolt out of your Cemetery, which deals 5 damage, and if you have an evolved follower, allows you to draw a card. And since Merlin's doing this on evolve, you'll always meet the evolved follower requirement to draw a card. Our final 3-cost follower is Runic Guardian. This is a 3-cost 3/4 with a ward, already a pretty decent stat line for a ward follower. But in addition, we have Fanfare. Choose one of the following effects. Option 1 is Earth Rite to give this follower +1/+2. Option 2 is to summon a Magic Sediment token. So if you need extra stack counters as you are progressing through your early turns, maybe you only drew 1 amulet or you didn't draw any amulets, as unlikely as that is, you can start getting your stack counters this way to spend on the following turns. But I think typically in this deck, we can make enough stack counters that you'll be choosing the +1/+2 option, putting Runic Guardian at a stat line of 4/6, which, as I've said, 6 is an incredibly good number for defense right now. It dodges Serpent Wrath, it dodges Humpty Dumpty, it dodges just a number of things that can remove other followers. So that makes this a really powerful ward that can stick around for a couple turns usually. Our spells at 3, we have 1 copy of Demonic Strike. This is 3 damage to any enemy leader or enemy follower on the field. Typically, if you're playing this, it's going to be going into the leader. as a burn spell to try to close out the game, unless you just happen to draw it and really need removal and don't have anything else. It's also one of the best targets for your Merlin to choose with the On Evolve effect, since recurring 3 damage to your opponent's leader can end the game. We also have 1 copy of a Witch Bolt, which, as I said, this is 5 damage to an enemy follower, and if there's an evolved follower on your field, draw a card. Typically, that evolved follower is going to be Merlin, since playing Merlin and evolving it will immediately be able to cast this from our cemetery and meet the requirement. Though, if you go second, there are times where a turn 2 evolve point crafty Warlock can be your evolve for Witch Bolt on turn 3. 5 damage here is really good in general at answering a lot of things. Since it's unconditional 5, you're going to be able to hit things like Dyla Scarlet, you're going to be able to hit fully evolved Ancient Elves, etc. to be able to take them out that way. At 4 cost, we have 2 copies of Phalus, Leonardian Mage. This is a 4/5 with both an Earth Rite and Spell Chain effect. Both on Fanfare, you can pay 1 stack counter to gain a Storm, which means we're going to get 4 damage straight to face. Or, and at Spell Chain 7, Fanfare, we deal 4 damage to each enemy follower on the field. Since we only play 10 spells in the deck, it's unlikely that you're going to get this Spell Chain effect most of the time, though we do have 1 card that can help enable it a little bit. Usually this is just going to be here since you can spend an extra stack to get 4 damage straight into your opponent off of it. Our next follower is Sun Oracle Pascal. This is a 4-cost 3/5. Fanfare, summon a Magic Sediment token, so it's going to give you 1 stack counter to use for its own effects. It has 2 quick timing activated effects that engage it and spend a stack counter. You can either give an enemy follower on the field -2/-2, or a follower on your field +2/+2. It unfortunately can't target itself with this effect, but being able to pump the defense and attack of your other followers can lead to some really strong outcomes. A lot of the followers in this deck, any of the golems after they get +1/+1 from golem protection, or your Phalus, or really like, I guess not Merlin. Merlin's only going to go up to 5 if you use this, but pretty much all your other followers are going to go up to 6 or higher defense off of a +2. Or if you have 2 Pascals and use 1 on the other, right? That gets you to a 5/7. And getting over that 5 threshold into 6 defense and higher is, as I've said, just going to be really hard for your opponents to remove. So using this offensively to both push extra damage and make your followers stick around longer is going to be the primary goal here. It's really strong. Alternatively, if you want to leave Pascal refreshed during your first turn that you play her and save her for the opponent's turn, you can use -2/-2 as either removal or just to lessen the amount of damage you're taking from a follower. Say they swing with a 2/3, you can turn it into a 0/1 that's just clogging up their board. But usually the +2/+2 is going to be your goal here, just to pump your own followers and attack the opponent. If you're able to say like turn 3, stick a follower, and then turn 4, play this and pump it, it's usually pretty good for you. Spells at 4, we have Execution at 2 copies. This is just generic removal spell. Destroy any enemy card on the field at quick timing. It is notably one of the only cards in the game right now that can destroy amulets. There aren't like a ton of decks playing amulets right now, but those that are, it's very important to them. Dracomancer's Rite and March Hare's Tea Time come to mind immediately as 2 very powerful amulets that you would want to destroy. Otherwise, you can just use this as unconditional follower removal at quick timing. In addition, we have a 6-cost follower, Millie Parfait, that is able to reduce the cost of spells we play by 4, meaning that we can get a 0-cost execution sometimes by using her effect. The next spell we play is Golem Protection at 3 copies. This is super important to our strategy. For 4 play points, we get 2 Guard Form Golem tokens, which is already the same amount it would normally take to play them. And then in addition, if we pay 1 stack counter, each Golem follower on our field gets +1/+1. That includes the 2 Guard Form Golems that this spell makes itself, and any Golems that we had previously from either Juno's Secret Laboratory, Ancient Alchemist, Alchemist's Workshop, etc. Those are all going to get buffed. The Guard Form Golems, again, are the 2/3s with a ward, so they're going to come in as 3/4s. Or if we have any strike form golems, those can become 4/3s. 4/3 is good at just removing some followers on the opponent's board with a rush and putting a dent in our opponent's defense total, whereas bumping our guard form golems up to 3/4 gets them out of range of things like Surefire Bullet. It gets them out of range of Lamplit, the new Armed Dragon removal spell, and forces some of the 4 damage spells against them, which really is usually 5 damage spells that your opponent's going to have to spend into them. And again, because of this +1/+1, making our guard form golems 3/4s, Pascal can buff them to 5/6s, which is out of range of a lot of the 5 damage removal as well. Again, just like Execution, since this costs 4, we are able to use Millie to reduce it to 0, making a really strong turn 6 play, being Millie into a 0-cost golem protection to get 2 free 3/4 guard form golems, into, again, if we have another stack, using Millie to hold up a 0-cost Execution on defense if our opponent tries to break through our guard form golems. So it really just leads to very strong mid and late game plays off of that. The only 5 cost we play is 1 copy of Juno's Secret Laboratory. This card was typically a 2 to 3 of in the decks in the early sets, but now we have enough other ways to sort of benefit from the stack counters, make the stack counters, and pressure our opponent that we just don't want to draw the second copy of Juno's Secret Laboratory ever. It takes up board space, especially since we're also going to have a stack counter on our board. There's 2 of our 5 slots immediately. But it is still strong enough that drawing 1 copy or finding it off Cauldron is pretty good. Fanfare, we get to summon a guard form or a strike form golem, so you're going to get to choose whichever one is better for the scenario. We can engage to summon a magic sediment token, which is going to give us an on-demand 1 stack each turn that we can spend. Or, if we have enough stacks already, we can spend 1 to summon, again, either a guard form or a strike form golem, just depending on which one is better for us in the current scenario. These also, it's worth noting, being able to make these for effectively 0. Obviously, we have to pay 5 for the laboratory, but 0 and an Earth Rite for 1 each turn is really good at triggering Ancient Alchemist's effect if we can get Juno's Secret Laboratory down first to deal 3 extra damage to the opponent. The next follower we play at 6 cost is Daria Dimensional Witch. This is a 6 cost 5/5 Fanfare. Discard your hand. Put the top card of your deck into your EX area. Repeat this until your EX area is full. Once we run out of gas in hand, if we've burned through all of our removal spells, burned through all of our token makers, etc., we can play this, discard like the 0 or 1 cards that we have left, and get 5 new cards into our EX area. Hopefully 5. If you still have guard forms stuck in your EX from Ancient Alchemist, I'd recommend trying to get those out before you play Daria, but sometimes you might only draw 3 or 4 if that's the case. Either way, this is just free card advantage to get us more cards in hand effectively, which is really strong at the point that we'd be able to play this for 6. In addition, while this card is on your field, both spells and runecraft followers in your cemetery will count toward your spell chain. We can pay 1 to evolve to get 2 separate on evolve effects. They basically do the same thing. One chooses a follower, one chooses a spell, and they both reduce the cost of the chosen card by 5 for the rest of the current turn. So you do have to be careful to make sure you can at least play whatever cards you're reducing. If you reduce another 6 cost, you will still need a 1 play point to play it in the same turn, or else it'll go back up to 6. And again, the same effect that's going to count runecraft followers in our cemetery for spell chain. This is really good with a lot of the higher cost cards in our deck. Reducing them by 5 can make them either 0 or 1 to play, which means we can get free copies of Aphalis, Sun Oracle, Pascal, Execution, or Golem Protection, or a 1 cost Millie Parfait. And once Millie Parfait is on board, as we've said, she's going to be able to reduce the cost of the 4-drop spells down to 0. So it's possible that we can get multiple free cards in a single turn. For just one extra play point, right? We can play 2 Golem Protections and a Millie Parfait for just 1 play point, or an Execution, which really strong. Gives us like really high power spikes at the point in the game when Daria comes down, in addition to the card advantage she provides. It's also worth noting that since she makes runecraft followers count towards spell chain, this is one of the only feasible ways that we're going to get Phalis' spell chain effect off to deal 4 damage to all enemy followers. So flipping Phalos off of Daria is really strong, since we can reduce cost by 5 and then play Phalos for 0 to get a Storm 4/5 that hopefully board wipes our opponent for no cost. The last follower we have is Witch of Calamity Millie Parfait. This is the same name as Wizardess of Oz, one of the cover legendaries for set 3 here. It's a 6 cost 4/6 fanfare, summon a magic sediment token, add 1 to a stack on your field, draw a card. So not only are we getting 1 stack, we're adding a second one to it, and also getting to draw a free card. So really strong fanfare effect, a lot of value there. And activated ability, quick timing, we can spend 1 stack counter to reduce the cost of the next spell we play this turn by 4. This can only be used once per turn, but it can be used on both your turn and the opponent's turn since it's quick timing. Meaning one of the strongest things we can do is play Millie, use her effect, get a free golem protection, and then on the opponent's turn use her effect again to get a free execution. This just leads to the opponent constantly having to sort of keep in mind that she exists anytime they want to attack, even if you're at 0 play points, since you have access to just free spells effectively. Even if you don't have execution, you can use her effect to play Surefire Bullet or Fire Chain for 0 as well. And that just really puts your opponent in tight spots, especially since her 6 defense is very hard to remove if she's refreshed before your opponent gives you the opportunity to have a quick timing. Looking at the deck as a whole, it is really powerful on paper. Earth Rite in the past, kind of the struggle has been you need to draw your cards in the right order. If you draw all of your Earth Rite payoffs before your stack amulets, or draw all of your stack amulets in a row with no payoffs, it does feel pretty bad. But when everything lines up and you can get stacks into play and follow them up with your Earth Rite cards, you get incredibly strong payoffs for the cost compared to what other decks can be doing, which is great to see. Some of the other pros of the deck, you have a high count of followers with Ward due to both Runic Guardian and all of the Guard Form tokens that you can generate, which most decks right now don't actually play that many followers with Ward. So being able to block storm damage against decks like Uma Musume and Dragoncraft can be really good. A lot of our followers have high defense stats, often higher than their attack stat. Runic Guardian can buff up to 6, Ancient Alchemist evolves to 6, Daria's a 6/6, Millie's a 4/6. Etc. And Pascal's +2/+2 can make almost any of our followers out of range of the relevant removal spells in the format. We also have multiple ways to deal effect damage directly to the enemy leader, so we don't have to rely on attacking. This is one of the things that makes decks like Fable Haven so strong, so it's still really good here. Demonic Strike being able to go face, and Ancient Alchemist dealing 3 whenever we get a golem. And then if we have to, past that, we do still have Phalos for storm damage straight to the opponent as well, as long as it can get an attack through. Downsides of the deck, as I said, it's a lot of moving pieces that need to come together, which drawing them in the wrong order, drawing your Earth Rite cards before your stack cards can really make the deck fall apart. We don't have any really good board clear effects here. Phalos' 4 damage to everything is kind of the only one in the list, and that's pretty hard to pull off without Daria. So you're going to need to rely on having enough ward followers to force your opponent to attack, and either weaken their own followers so that you can remove them easier or just crash outright. And our strategy does rely on our followers surviving for a lot of the value. Because we have such high defense, we've kind of put a lot of stock in that high defense and getting our followers to stick around so that we can play new cards the next turn to utilize the effect that our previous followers had. Such as sticking an Ancient Alchemist and then the next turn making all your golems, or anything like that. Some of the other cards that I would consider for this deck, there are a number of other amulets with stack that we could play. Sweets Buffet gives us 3 defense for a 1 cost, Red Hot Ritual deals 3 damage for 2 cost, and Price of Magic banishes a 4 defense or lower for 3 cost. I would typically try to stay away from the 3 cost one just because you want your stat counters on board by that point already. Once you're at 3 and higher, you kind of want to start getting payoffs for them. But banishing a 4 defense or lower is pretty strong, and it can hit a lot of relevant cards, especially with all the like 4/4 evolves right now. Same as Surefire Bullet, really. Red Hot Ritual dealing 3 damage. and Gingerbread House, or it's a Sweets Buffet, giving you 3 defense, can both be good against aggressive decks with smaller followers, since you can play these to either get a buffer against early attacks or just remove small followers on turn 2 after your opponent's played them. I think they're both viable options. I don't have them here because I just want consistency and card draw, but if you find that you need extra removal, this is where to go. There are also a number of Golem followers that you can use with Ancient Alchemist to get the reduced 1 cost and trigger the 3 damage effect without using tokens. Grand Gargoyle, I think, is an especially good one. It's a 3 cost 3/4, so again, a pretty decent stat line with Word. And Last Words, you get to add 2 to a stack on your field. Downside is that if you don't have any stacks when this Last Words triggers, you're not going to get to add to any of them, since it doesn't make its own magic sediment. But being a Golem that you can play for 2 with Ancient Alchemist on board, you can buff it +1/+1 with your Golem protections, and it's a ward for you. It's just pretty good all around. Mithril Golem, being a 6 cost 5/6 that you can play for 5 with Ancient Alchemist, is also pretty powerful, but the downside here is that a lot of its effects rely on spell chain, meaning you're not really going to get a lot of value out of it unless you're playing Daria first, or playing this off of Daria. 3 damage to each enemy follower on the field without spell chain is okay, but for 6 play points, we probably want to be doing more. At spell chain 7, we can deal 5 to each enemy follower, and at 15, we also deal 5 to the enemy leader. 15 is basically impossible without Daria, since we only play 10 spells, and 7 is still hard, just as it is on Phalos. So I think as far as board clear on a follower, Phalos is probably still better here, despite Mithril Golem being a golem for all of our effects. Lastly, we have a couple removal spells that we can look at here. Alchemical Lore is another option if we want wide board clears. For 5 play points, we can deal 4 damage to each enemy follower. This being a spell means that we can just play 1 copy and search it off of Merlin when we need it, though it's not recurable with her evolve effect since it costs too much. Dance of Death is also an option that we can play over Execution. If you're not worried about amulets, you can use Dance of Death to deal 5 damage to an enemy follower and then 2 to its leader, so that's going to give us extra burn damage. And 5 still will clear out most things, though not as many as Execution. Obviously, Execution is still going to be what we need for some of the bigger threats, raced ogre caps and things like that. Other downside is that this card's not quick timing, so we can't use Millie with Execution. We can't use Millie with Dance of Death rather on our opponent's turn, like we can with Execution. So overall, I think this card is a little worse, but if you do want the extra burn damage, it is an option. Taking a look back at the entire deck as a whole, here you are. Again, the deck log at 60YP, you can check that out. Here's our Evolve deck once again, pretty simple. And as always, thank you for watching. I've enjoyed doing all these decks. We just got 2 more classes to get through. We still got Dragon and Abyss. This will be coming up soon. Until then, please like, subscribe, comment, suggest any decks that you want to see in the future. And you should be able to click the videos on the screen right now if you want to watch some others while you're waiting for the new stuff. And we'll see you then.